Hi everybody! So in today's video we're doing something a bit special because I wanted to present to you my favourite of all times series of books, which is the Edge Chronicles. So you have it all here and I will be presenting it in a minute. But first I wanted to shout out to Lectrice, who is a wonderful booktuber. She's done this tag called Relance ta chaîne ou lance ta chaîne, which kind of means start your channel or restart your channel. And she offered me to take part in it, so I've already done my newbie tag, so the first video is done, and this is the second one. This is my favorite series and just presenting my love of book through the favorite one. So shout out to her. I will be sending her link in the bar down below in the description. She's amazing and she's got like the most beautiful French voice you'll ever hear. Like I just sound a bit like some sort of little mole, but she sounds delightful. It's just a pleasure to listen to her. So yeah, go check her out. But let's start with the Edge Chronicles. So it's been classified as middle grade. I mean, it's a bit of a strange one because when you go to bookshelves, when you go to bookstores in the UK, you will find it in the 9 to 12 section, which is kind of the middle grade one. But I would kind of argue that it would have a place in YA, and there's a few arguments for this, but I will come back to it within the video. Okay, so the Edge Chronicles, it is a middle grade series of books that has been written by Chris Riddell and Paul Stewart. It's an amazing high fantasy series that's kind of like adventures. It's got a lot of big steampunk influences. It's been a massive part of my life since I was 9 years old. I started to read the series with the first trilogy, and I just kind of got hooked and loved it. So you've got here my collection of the French books. The first trilogy came out, Trilogy of Twig, and then the prequel of Quint, and then sequel of Rook, and then a few books in between to kind of like bring the lore a bit bigger. And then we had another book, which is The Immortal. It was a duology in France. It was a standalone in the UK and in America. God knows why. I've got the two here, so I'm very proud of myself. But I've got those. And then there is a fourth trilogy, actually, that came out a few years ago, who is the Cade Saga, and I haven't had the chance to read it because it hasn't been translated in French. Let's talk a little bit about the authors now. So Paul Stewart, Chris Riddell, they are two British lads who are from Brighton. They both met because their children were going at the same school. And Paul writing stories and Chris drawing illustration. They kind of like started to do a little bit of work together. So they started collaborating in 1993. Their first work was I think The Rabbit and the Hedgehog. And in 1994, Chris draws the very first map of the Edge and asks Paul to write a chapter. After a bit of work and a bit of tweaking, the first chapter is actually properly drafted and they start from there. So what's the Edge Chronicles exactly about? So the themes are quite large and broad. It's mainly, you know, staying off the beaten tracks, identity search. It's always about like growth, finding oneself. But there's a lot of like quite deeper subjects that are tackled in those. There is slavery, there is racism, there's a lot of different things tackled in it. So it's quite a deep series of books, which kind of like makes me think that the middle grade label is a bit, sometimes it could be bumped up to YA quite easily, especially back then. So this came out from 1998 till 2008, and then the Cade Saga a bit later on. But you know, these were the years of Harry Potter, and it could have been easily put into YA. Let's have a little look at the map. So we've got a few different locations in this map here. We've got Undertown, which is the main industrial town. This is quite, you know, steampunk, so quite like industrial revolution, sorry. It's got that kind of vibe. So Undertown is this very polluted town where there's a lot of industry going on. You can see all the smokes from the chimneys, which kind of makes you think like proper manufacturing kind of time. You've even got the sewers like leaking out into the void. So this is like a very concentrated and populated city, and attached to it is a floating rock, which is Sanctifrax. Now, Sanctifrax is kind of like a university, so a lot of like this elite academic kind of layer of society is living up top and studying the different variants of weather. It's all very related to weather and forecast and everything. So you've got different colleges focusing on the rain and the mist, and it's all kind of like its mini society. And the fact that it's up top compared to Undertown makes it very much this hierarchy that goes between them two. And underneath, just right there on the left, you've got the stone gardens. So the way science and magic works here is it's got its own magic system. So stones are growing in the stone gardens, and they have this ability to kind of like grow and get lighter and lighter, and eventually they just kind of like reach all the way up into the sky and kind of disappear. Sanctifrax is one of them. It's obviously a rock that's been growing, and they've managed to keep anchored to the edge, to the city, so they could build something on it. But most likely the rocks that are big enough to be captured are being put in flying spaceship. So they're not exactly spaceship, they're pretty much like regular ships that you'd see in a pirate story. But they have the ability to float thanks to those rocks that are being captured in like this kind of cage, and they use heat and cold to be able to make them like rise or descend, and this all relates to the ages of flight. So there's 3 ages of flight, and all our characters in there will be evolving and like spending their life within different ages of flight. So you've got Quint and Twig that are in the first one, Rook in the second, and the transition with Nate, which is kind of like going into the 3rd age of flight. But carrying on with the map, we've got the Maya, which is kind of just a big desert, kind of boggy Maya. Yeah, it's just a Maya. Then we've got the Twilight Woods. So those are kind of like special. This is a special forest where there's always this kind of like twilight ambience going on. And if you come inside it, you will just lose your path and your mind and will be trapped forever. But a substance that's been in this forest for ages is kind of keeping your cells alive. So you will be remaining in this forest for eternity and just lose your mind. And you'll just be a walking skeleton at the end. We've got the Edgelands, which is kind of like rocky, and it's like the moon, to be honest. There's nothing there apart from like an evil presence, but that's kind of being said in the books, so we'll see that in a bit. And then finally the Deep Woods, which is just a massive forest of pine with loads and loads of different creatures and loads of tribes living there. So it's very complete, it's super unique, it's awesome. So the first 3 trilogies, this is a hard one, are all related with like family blood. So Quint is Twig's father and Rook is Twig's grandson. I think this is how it works. So they're all like evolving in different ages of flight. The first 2 are in the first one, and Rook is in the last one with Nate, which is like a distance relationship to them. So all our 4 characters from the 3 trilogies and then the duology or the standalone book, which by the way looks like this. It's a massive morsel. And in the French one, there's duology. So what's kind of unique in this book for me is that every single one of our characters will evolve in the Edge and will have to suffer the change of kind of like environment that the Edge is like going through. So there is a stone disease at some point. They discover how to change the way they flight. They kind of endure their environment but always bounce back and find a solution. And it's quite a new take, I think. I haven't seen many fantasy book where it's actually the land itself, the map itself that is changing, and that makes our characters change with it. Usually it's more, political, people fight over the land and, the conflicts are being resolved between the different tribes, but the land doesn't change that much. And I think the other thing is, like, it still feels quite close and relatable to humans because there is a lot of different tribes in the Edge. Our main one and the one that we're following is Fourthlings, so it's all, all our main characters are Fourthlings. But there's trolls, and there are talking birds, and there are goblins, and there are like savage tribes, and there's all of these different kind of like societies, and they all fight each other for power. There is like racism involved where certain tribes are being like used and abused, and there's even slavery. So it's quite an adult kind of like theme. There is death, there is grief, there's mourning, there is love as well. Our characters fall in love, they marry, they have children. It's kind of like massive, grander picture, which you don't always get in certain YA books or adult fantasy books even, and in middle grade. So this is quite a unique perspective, I think. I just find it very appealing. Now I know it's not completely perfect. There's always things that you can find. In a modern perspective, I know there's not that many female characters, but it's never stopped me from relating to the main characters. But that's enough for the presentation. I think what I'd like to do now is to do a complete reread of the series. So when I was little, I read the 3 first trilogies and then a bit of the books that are like adding to the lore, but I never got the chance to read the Nate saga simply because I didn't get the last book and I was waiting for it to come out to read it in one go, and it just never happened. So I would love to do a reread and kind of like have my adult perspective on it and see if I can find different aspects to it with like my adult eyes. Yeah, and have a bit more of a complete look on it, so keep an eye out. Thank you very much for listening to me on that one. It's very dear to me, it's my very favourite one, and I was really eager to share it with you guys. So tell me what you think in the comments, and if you liked it then drop a little blue thumb, but otherwise we'll see you later. Salut!